For my thoughts on all the latest happenings in the NFL in a completely relaxed, unscripted format, be sure to check out my channel, JG9 News. And now, on with our feature presentation. This player right here is Lydell Mitchell, and he truly might be one of the most underrated running backs in football history. When you think of all the great receiving halfbacks in NFL history, and you think of guys like Darren Sproles, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, and the likes, they can trace their game back to Lydell Mitchell. When the Baltimore Colts were one of the best teams in football during the mid-70s and got out of the doldrums, the play of Mitchell was an instrumental reason as to why that was the case. He had 3 straight seasons where he made the Pro Bowl and recorded over 1,100 rushing yards. He had 2 seasons where he led the NFL in receptions and had 4 consecutive seasons with at least 60 catches. For some perspective, at that point in NFL history, here's a list of every single running back to have a season with 60 or more catches. No one else had even done it more than once. And here was Mitchell doing it in 4 consecutive seasons, going back to back to back to back. He truly was a trendsetter. Not many people remember how good he was today, but he was the modern running back half a century ago. Now, Mitchell ended up playing for 3 teams in his career. He started out with the Baltimore Colts, where he had the most success, making the playoffs a handful of times and receiving multiple AP second-team All-Pro honors. Then, after a massive falling out that's the story for another video, he found himself on the San Diego Chargers in 1978 and 1979. And then, to end his career, in 1980, he found himself in the NFC for the first time, playing for the Los Angeles Rams. You might know that if you know Mitchell's story. However, what you might not know is the fact that in 1980, he almost never played for the Rams, but instead was this close to playing for the New York Giants. Instead of staying on the West Coast, he was close to going back to the East Coast. So why wasn't this man you've been watching this whole time a Giant? Why didn't he play in the Big Apple? Well, it had to do with an absolutely bizarre story full of deception and lies. If you want to know why the Giants were somewhat of a laughingstock around this time period, this is a great but forgotten example as to why that was the case. Because this is the story behind the strangest controversy surrounding the 1980 New York Giants football team. Before I talk about why the drama between the Giants and the man they are going to be watching throughout this video, Lydell Mitchell, even existed in the first place, we need some context to understand, well, why the Giants were even interested in him. In 1979, the Giants were not a good football team, going 6-10 and never spending a single day above 500 after starting 0-5 and losing their final 3 games of the season. Now, defensively, the Giants weren't all that bad. In Ray Perkins' first season as the head coach of the team, he had the defense in the top half of the league in many major statistical categories, including points allowed. But the offense? That was another story. Because the offense in 1979 ranked 27th out of 28 teams in points scored, scoring just 237 points all season, or barely over 14 points per game. The only team worse than that was the 2-14 Detroit Lions, who had a ton of drama of their own that season, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. There were many reasons for that, including poor quarterback play thanks in part to rookie Phil Simms having some understandable and completely expected growing pains, and a lack of a top-end wide receiver, as Ernest Gray, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, was the only player on the team with at least 500 receiving yards. However, perhaps the biggest reason for the struggles of the Giants' offense was their awful ground game, which ranked 22nd out of 28 teams in rushing yards, 24th in rushing touchdowns, and 23rd in yards per carry. There was one particular game against the St. Louis Cardinals that stood out from Week 2, which the Cards won 27-14. The Cardinals had 189 rushing yards, and their first-round pick, and oddly enough, future Giant Otis Anderson, had over 160 yards from scrimmage, playing a big part in the win. The Giants, meanwhile, had just 40 rushing yards. Not a single player on the team that season had over 700 rushing yards, and no matter who got the rock, whether it was Billy Taylor, or Emery Moorhead, or Ken Johnson, or anyone else, the Giants were stuck in the mud more often than not. In fact, the running game was so bad that if you just look at runs from their running backs, so excluding quarterback runs by Phil Simms, the Giants averaged just 3.4 yards per carry all season. If they were going to improve in 1980 and be any sort of threat in the formidable and ultra-competitive NFC East, then they were going to need to bolster the run game tremendously. And that's where the man we've been watching this whole time comes into play, because Lydell Mitchell was available for the taking. Mitchell entered the 1980 season as the 11th leading rusher in NFL history, but if he was going to climb up the ranks, it was not going to be with the San Diego Chargers, as in the team he spent the previous 2 seasons with. The 1979 season was not a good one for Mitchell. The man was on the wrong side of 30. The man was losing the explosion and strength that made him so good throughout the mid-70s, averaging a career-worst 3.3 yards per carry in 79. The man was injured, missing some time during that 1979 season with a staph infection in his knee. And the man was losing a considerable amount of playing time to recently acquired Washington running back, former AP Offensive Rookie of the Year, and former Pro Bowler Mike Thomas. So while Mitchell was no longer on the Chargers, he was able to be signed by any team of his choosing, and it seemed like, considering the lack of talent in the Giants' backfield on paper, especially after losing their top 2 running backs due to injury for the time being, and considering Mitchell's impressive resume, having recorded over 1,000 yards from scrimmage in 6 of the last 7 seasons, with the majority of those being 14-game seasons where it's a lot harder to do it, that the New York Giants were the perfect fit for Mitchell's services. And the Giants seem to think so as well, especially since their head coach, Ray Perkins, was the offensive coordinator for the San Diego Chargers in 1978, where Mitchell played that season and had success, with over 1,300 yards from scrimmage. Mitchell knew the offense, liked Perkins a lot, and seeing as Perkins wanted Mitchell in San Diego 2 years before, it's no real surprise now that Mitchell became available that Perkins would want to utilize him again in a struggling offense. Said Mitchell on the Giants being interested in him, contacting him, and scheduling a workout with him and a flight to fly out to New York, I know I can still play. I'm probably in better shape than I've been in for several seasons. I'd like to think the Giants could be important to me, and that I could be important to them. I don't know much about them, but Coach Perkins and I have mutual respect for each other. Maybe being around their young guys could have a rejuvenating effect on me, and maybe they could pick up something from me. Sometimes, a veteran can help. I just hope I can come in here and do a job. I really, really want to play. I enjoy football. After I was waived by the Chargers, something I hope would never happen, I went home and relaxed. Not many teams contacted me, because they didn't know where I was. I was glad when the Giants did. I still have some more playing to do, and I'd like to do it here. Say a little prayer that everything works out. Unfortunately for Mitchell, his prayers went unanswered, and he did not sign a contract with the Giants, as the Giants decided to pursue other options with their need at running back, thinking that Mitchell, despite his impressive resume over the years, might not be the best man in 1980 to fix their problems. Now by itself, this is a complete non-story. This happens all the time, where players are brought in for a workout, and they wind up getting unsigned and leaving the building without a contract. If I did a video on every single time in NFL history this happened, I'd have to make 100,000 videos. It's an extremely common occurrence that by itself isn't anything special. But what makes this situation absolutely insane is what happened during the workout. Or rather, what didn't happen during the workout. Which is, the actual workout part. Now, the Giants rolled out the red carpet for Mitchell. They picked him up at the airport in their team vehicle. They brought him to a nearby Sheraton and put him in a room, paying for the expense. But then, they didn't even work him out. They just sent him on their way without doing anything, whether it be a physical or a workout or anything, and decided not to bring him onto the team or give him the chance to be a part of it. Said Mitchell, things just didn't work out. I thought they could, but they didn't. I'm disappointed. And said Ray Perkins on the matter, I visited with him, and we talked a long time. I spoke with him on the phone. We decided to go with what we've got. I didn't have to try him out, and it was not because of money. It was another reason that I won't discuss. And it's not like the Giants signed another running back, or someone became available and there was no need for them to work Mitchell out anymore. Perkins was furious about the situation in his backfield, saying that the team was going to continue looking for a veteran, saying, "We have a guy who's played very little, backed up by 2 rookies. That's what we have." They brought Mitchell all this way, only to not even work him out and to send him packing for no reason. But as if that wasn't crazy enough, don't worry, it gets even weirder and worse. Because what's even crazier about this is that the Giants tried to deny that this ever happened, despite the fact that we had concrete proof that the Giants were bringing him in for a workout, despite the fact that the team made accommodations for him, despite the fact that Lydell Mitchell himself confirmed this, and despite the fact that Ray Perkins himself flat out said that they wanted to bring him onto the team and that the two sides talked, General Manager George Young denied the fact that they had any contact with the man whatsoever. The Giants got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and now they're trying to use the shaggy defense of "it wasn't me." Like, they do realize it's okay to say that they were looking at Mitchell and it didn't work out, right? Because Young said that the reason for Mitchell's visit to New York, which was funded entirely by the Giants, mind you, was because, I kid you not, in Young's words, he just came to see a friend, Bo Matthews. That's right, Mitchell was just visiting a friend. Somehow, this lie, excuse, and explanation, or whatever the heck that you want to call it, is so unbelievable that it makes Biz Marquis' girls saying he's just a friend actually plausible. Matthews played for the Chargers while Mitchell was there in 1978 and 1979. And now, Matthews was playing for the Giants. Oddly enough, I've done a video on Matthews before, so if you want to learn more about his NFL career, you can do so by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But let me get this straight. You paid for Mitchell to come to New York. You had a team car pick him up at the airport. You put him in a hotel near the facility on your dime. And now, you're trying to deny that and said that he came all this way unbeknownst to you to visit a friend? How the heck does that make any sense? Genuinely, what is the incentive to lie about that? And to make matters crazier, naturally, Bo Matthews himself was asked about this, and Matthews had no idea that this was the reason for the visit. It was complete news to him. How does that make sense? This is the dumbest lie I've ever heard, especially because there's no reason to lie about this, and all the evidence suggests, including from your own freaking staff members, that this is the farthest thing from the truth. There are so many plot holes in this story by Young that it's unbelievable, especially because the plot holes make you look a million times worse. You brought in Mitchell for the workout and it didn't work out? Alright, no big deal, it happens, it's a non-story. Mitchell came in on your dime to visit a friend? Alright, how can I trust anything you say? And if that is true, you're telling me that for Bo Matthews, a man who just got here, you're going to pay for a fully expenses-paid trip to have him reunite with a friend for a bit, but not for me, a seasoned veteran or even a player who's a starter? That's how you're going to treat me? I want out. So just to recap this insanity, you have a running back who was brought in for a workout and says he was brought in for the explicit purposes of a workout. A coach who didn't actually work him out, but said that he was brought in for a workout. And a general manager who didn't work him out and said that he wasn't brought in for a workout. 3 different groups in the player, the coach, and the general manager telling 3 completely different stories in what should be a completely straightforward thing. I'm not saying Mitchell deserved to be signed by the Giants by any means. He ended up playing with the Rams in 1980 and only had 16 rushing yards on 2.3 yards per carry before never playing again. So the Giants were right in that regard. But I'm saying that he deserved better than, well, whatever the heck this was. As for this team behind me right here in the New York Football Giants, I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to you that the Giants were not a very good team in 1980, going 4-12 and finishing with a terrible offense that was second to last in football in points scored. thanks in part to an anemic ground game that was 25th in the league in rushing yards and 27th in yards per carry. The Giants were a complete dysfunctional mess that season, and this story with Lydell Mitchell truly exhibited that. Now, am I saying that the Giants' offense would be better and the ground game would be better if they brought Mitchell onto the fold that season and gave him the workout and brought him onto the team? No, not at all. We saw that with the Rams season that he had, the Giants probably made the right call there. But am I saying that the Giants would have probably had a better season if they were less dysfunctional and were more competently run and not, well, whatever the heck this whole situation was? Based on what we saw in 1980 and for most of the 1970s for that matter, that's probably a resounding yes. So just as a word to the wise, if you're a team and you're looking at signing a free agent, especially an established veteran who has been in the league for a while, look at what the New York Giants did in 1980. And then do the exact opposite. Don't fly the man out and talk about how you want to bring him onto the team, only to then not even work him out and completely waste the man's time and get his hopes up. That's a great way to get players to not pick up the phone when you call. And if you do decide to do that for some reason, do not, under any circumstances, lie about this and say that he wasn't there or was there for a completely different reason when we all know that's clearly not the case. If you're funding for a player to be there, you're picking him up, and you're putting him in a hotel, we all know he's there because of your own doing, and not just to visit a friend or for whatever random reason you want to make up, especially when the friend himself has no idea about this. Because in 1980, let's just say that when it came to the controversy between the New York Giants and this man right here, Lydell Mitchell, it involved a giant lie. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.